another comment here from someone saying that, let me just pull it up. She's noticed that the complaining thoughts have disappeared and they're not arising. And it's so amazing. I was in so much pain. I feel so relaxed. It's happening from last night. She feels this quietness, this silence and stillness within herself. So this is great. This is, again, once we have the awakening to our true nature, that first initial glimpse, there's kind of this feeling of, okay, it's flip-flopping. I'm in it. I'm not in it. I'm in it. I'm not in it. That's not really how it is, because you are always it. It's just less and less identification with the mind, less and less thinking. So you're noticing that the mind is very noisy. And when we are identified with the mind, it's so noisy. And when we withdraw our attention from the mind, then we are simply resting in our being, which is very quiet and still and peaceful. So there's this feeling of being at home. There's this feeling of being at rest. There's this feeling of being relaxed. There's this feeling of just enjoying that solitude. And the pain is the pain of suffering from believing your thoughts. The pain is being identified as a thought. The pain is believing yourself to be a separate entity, which is no more than a thought. And so at the first, when we first kind of realize our true nature, it's very much this openness, this expansion, this feeling like, well, one, I'm not my thoughts. That's a huge freedom. Two is now I'm separate from my thoughts. There seems to be some distance. Like you can see like, okay, there's my mind in front of me and that's where the thought activity is happening and I'm back here. So right there, that's the end of suffering. No, suffering is only possible if you're the body and the mind. But as soon as you start seeing that I'm not the body and I'm not the mind, and they are appearing in front of you and you are separate from them, there's this distance that is created. There's this freedom from the body, freedom from the mind. Then that's the end of suffering. You're no longer suffering your thoughts. The thoughts are just happening. And you can simply watch the thoughts go by without identifying with them. But as soon as you start identifying with your thoughts, then you start suffering. Then you start experiencing the pain. Then you start experiencing the worry, the nervousness, the anxiety, the sadness, the depression, the guilt, the shame, all that stuff. You start experiencing that. But if you can just simply watch and witness the thoughts appearing and not be so interested in the thoughts and not give so much of attention to the thoughts, but instead the attention just withdraws from the mind and it rests in itself. You are attending yourself instead of the mind. You are attending your being instead of the doing. The thinking mind is doing. Thinking is a doing. And we are overly identified with our doing. And the majority of humanity has not realized our one being. Underneath all of the doing is our one being. And if you look really closely, you'll start seeing that all of the doing is arising out of our one being. And our one being is always here. It's the doing that's coming and going. So once you start resting in our being, then there's this feeling of rest. There's this feeling of relaxation. There's this feeling like you can simply just be. We're so used to doing that it always has this pressure, like you've got to just go. You got to go, 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 and you can't rest. So when this is discovered, it very much feels like you've been on a treadmill your entire life and you finally hopped off and you're, oh, now I can take a rest. Now I don't need to be running. I can just simply be, because the mind is constantly running. It's this treadmill. You're constantly running. As long as you are identified with a thought, well, now you're a thought on the treadmill, constantly running with a carrot in front of your face, thinking that your happiness lies somewhere in the future. And it doesn't. It doesn't. Because the future doesn't exist and the past doesn't exist. There's only here and now. And here and now is our being. And when you hop off the treadmill, then naturally you start feeling this rest, this relaxation, this happiness, this love, this peace. And the more you just simply stay away from the treadmill and just rest, then that sense of happiness, love, peace, freedom, fulfillment, completeness, wholeness seems to be getting stronger and stronger. And you're not getting so identified with the thoughts. You don't get back on the treadmill. It's like you become wise to know, I played that game enough. I was playing that my entire life, identifying, this is what I was deprived from. I was deprived from my being. I was deprived from my true nature. I'm going to stay put. I'm going to rest. And you just simply start becoming less and less interested in the mind. You just watch it. It's like you know all of its tricks. It's like you can see everything. It's this renunciation within yourself. It's not to say you're renouncing the entire world and you're now not involved in it. It's like you're renouncing the mind. You're just renouncing. You're turning away from the mind. You're turning away from the mind and coming back to yourself, you could say. Or you're retreating from the mind. Retreating is like withdrawal, right? You're withdrawing from the mind. You're coming back. You're retreating, moving back from the mind, back into your being. And that's why you start feeling more and more relaxed and more open and more at rest and at peace, right? And you start seeing all of the activity. And by simply not feeding the mind with your attention, it's like you cut off its food supply. Because without attention, that activity just dies down. It dies down. You just start resting. You just start enjoying the peace more and more. And again, that's that transition through awakening that transition is you just basically become less and less interested. You stop giving your attention to the mind and you just starve it. And let's leave it at that for this stage instead of going too far ahead. But it's a good observation that you've made. So simply enjoy it. Enjoy your being.